Manchester City then through to the Carabao Cup final just to defend their crown against Aston Villa. Then to the Carabao Cup final to face Aston Villa on March 1st. What's a big takeaway from this game, Craig, as we look at the stats?
I think Gary Taphouse in the commentary at the end summed it up quite nicely. They limped over the line, City, because, you know, there were one punt into the box and one challenge, one header, one drop ball, one strike away from going to penalties.
Yeah.
And why? Because, one, defensively, they've been shaky all year, we get that. But two, and you saw that little clip with the reaction from the City manager when Maguire gave it away, and they tried to play another pass. There's three of them, right? And they're trying to play another pass on the penalty spot when the easy thing to do was strike the ball at the goal. All this tippy-tappy football from City is great to watch at times, but make the right decision at the right time. When it's on to take a shot at goal, take a shot. If it's not, play the pass. And that's why at times they're not killing teams off. It's just overcomplicating it.
City simply are not and have not been anywhere near as ruthless as you would think, as you would like. At the same time, though, as we sit here, I thought this should have been all about Manchester City taking advantage of United. But I thought United, despite City's own issues, I thought they competed particularly well, particularly in that second half. I thought Solskjaer got his tactics right, how high up he pressed against City.
They didn't create much, though, did they?
But they didn't have to.
Yes, they did.
Well,
they did.
When I say you're one up, you know that City have an error in them, and that's what you're playing for. That was always their tactics. And again, listen, I know we're talking about City going through, but I was more expecting a hammering, the City to hammer Manchester United. So for United to come away with a win, I think I stand corrected, certainly in terms of my own expectation, and United fared better than, quite clearly, I thought they would.
That's it then. This is where United are now.
Mm-hmm. Well, when you play Manchester City and Nicolas Otamendi is on the field, the tactics become very simple. Force the ball to Otamendi and play it into his area, wherever he is on the field, because he's either going to give it back to you, he's going to commit a foul, he's going to put Manchester City in a difficult situation defensively. So Manchester United, to their credit, they did challenge Manchester City somewhere or thereabouts in the middle of midfield. And then you have to say, well, maybe Nemanja Matic did have a good game up until the red card. Maybe Fred did compete. But I cannot, for the life of me, think that Manchester United is down to a level of simply having moral victories, of saying, you know, we were close. We're right there. And I think that's what's troubling, is that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer will hang on to this and say things like, well, this is yet another step forward. It shows that we are on the right path. And if you are objective about this team, you cannot say that they're in the right path. This may be something of a positive sign, if you will, if you want to hang on to that. But I think it's more about Manchester City and their inability and unwillingness to put the game away when there was an opportunity to do so in the first leg, and certainly here in the second leg. So if you're a Manchester United fan, you can hang on to it and say, you know what? Yeah, this is great. Or you can say, you know what? If De Gea doesn't make the early saves in the game, we're not in the ballgame to begin with.
Let's not forget, Manchester City have Real Madrid in the Champions League. They're not going to win the Premier League this season. Obviously, they're through to the Cup final. But if you're a Manchester City supporter watching that game, or watching the both legs, and the fact that they couldn't put United to bed when they had the chance, Real Madrid, obviously, much, much better, there's a genuine concern there.
I'm not confident about them, I tell you, just because they're not killing teams off. And Shaka's, that word, ruthless. They've not been ruthless enough. And they have to be ruthless because they haven't got the defence to play that tippy-tappy, we'll get a goal when it comes, and they'll keep a clean sheet at the back, because they're not doing it.
Yeah.
And when they play better players, clearly Real Madrid, quality top-end players, they make mistakes, they'll get punished. And so I would be concerned about it. Now, he's got a bit of time to work on it. You saw Laporte in the stands, back from long-term injury, got a little niggle, so no risk there. That's a plus for them. However, I would be concerned with the defensive part of their game. Yeah. They look like a team that needs 2 to 3 goals every game to get the win or get the points. And it's not quite happening for
But
him.
City have players to score 2 or 3 goals every single game. Yet you look at the evidence of this 90 minutes at least, and you wonder where that's going to come from. Listen, I know that David De Gea made some good saves that, kind of goes against how he has fared over recent weeks. But City have the players, and you feel certainly have the midfield to be scoring bucket loads, but it's eluding them, and that's concerning.
Here's the image that I did not think we were going to be looking at towards the end of this game. And it's Manchester City concerned and upset that they were not able to take the ball to the corner and keep it there, hanging on against a 10-man Manchester United. So see, that's the part in which I'm like, okay, this is a Manchester City that every time we show that full screen with the bookies and Champions League, and they say they are the favorites. And I'm looking at the evidence and I'm thinking, maybe the best version of Manchester City could be favorites in Champions League, but we haven't seen the best version of Manchester City in a while now, and we keep thinking, yeah, it's coming. Yeah, it's coming. They have some time. Laporte is coming back. Okay, but at some point you have to trend in that direction, and we just haven't seen enough consistency out of Manchester City.
They've just lost to United twice.
Yeah. This Manchester United.
Exactly. In a short space of time, they've just lost at home. Amongst the other teams that have dropped points to this season in the league, they've just lost. They've got to a cup final, I understand, but they've just lost to United twice on their own patch. That's concerning. As for, and by the way, beyond this season, he'll have to go out and they'll have to spend in the back line. There's not a shadow of a doubt about it. On the other side of the coin, and I think Ali touched on it a little bit, with United, I think the concern for them is here that Solskjaer, with results like this and little bits where he picks away, gives the people that be, the powers that be at United, food for thought to say, if they're not already, we think we've got the right guy going forward. You know, rather than, we need to make a change. Because I think most of us think they need to make a change, certainly in the summer. But if he gives them enough and they don't do it, I think it can put them even further behind the 8 ball next year.
I think this is more than enough for what we've seen from this United board to say
absolutely.
that Solskjaer's the right man. Let's be honest. The PSG game and result got him the full-time position.
Yep.
I think this performance and result keeps him in the job at least through to the start of next season.
It's a PSG game that, oh, by the way, he referred to it in the lead up to this game. Hey, look, this is what we can do. This is what we're capable of. So if you're about to selling that, you can say, see, I told you that we could do it. Here we are again. We're having an opportunity to advance. We got unfortunate in the end.
Meanwhile, it's been quite the chase, hasn't it, for Bruno Fernandes? Done deal, though. He will be heading to United before the end of the transfer window, making that switch from Sporting to United. Let's welcome in Gab Marcotti, shall we, to the show. Gab, is this a good signing, in your opinion?
Well, it's an expensive signing when you consider that, you know, it's 45 million plus up to another 20 to 25 odd million, depending on performances and bonuses, plus a sell-on fee, you know, for a guy who's 26 years old. On the other hand, he's a two-time Player of the Year in Portugal. He's a guy that United have obviously looked at for a very, very long time. And, you know, from United's perspective, money's not really the issue. They're not counting pennies here. They have money. And so I think the question is, I don't think he's ever performed on a stage this big, even before Sporting when he was in Serie A. He was at clubs like Sampdoria and Udinese. But you know what? There's a lot of quality players who are late developers. Just look at Virgil van Dijk.
United would like that, obviously, if he could replicate what the Dutchman has done. How much better? Does this mean United now are going to finish in the top 4, for example?
No, but there's a piece in the jigsaw for them that they can go out and further adjust that in the summer, which they're going to have to do. So he's a player that they wanted. A clean sheet. I know they didn't keep one against, was it Wolves? But apart from that, they've kept clean sheets for fun recently. Something we talked about with Man City. They can't do it.
You know what's great? The feeling of certainty that you know
Look at that.
you're going to win.
33 matches, 32 wins.
Well, they might need that goal difference.
Probably. That certainty that when you step on the field, you're in that tunnel and you're looking across to the team and say, they have no chance.
Yeah, and the other team know that as well.
They know that as well. And the players out on the field will recognize, I'm going to do my job, and I trust that the guy next to me is going to do his job, and we're going to win. And it's fun, and it's enjoyable, and it's great. And guess what? We're going to do the same thing next week and the week after that. It is a great place to be if you're in Liverpool.
They were tested severely in that Wolves game, weren't they?
It was a proper match.
It was a proper match. This, West Ham have got another fight in their hands, and it's not playing against somebody at the top.
Former Hammer of the Year, Shaka Hislop.
Yes.
He's worried. He said
Yes,
yesterday.
obviously, you could say, it's Liverpool. But the problem is everything that's happened preceding this and the big games they've got coming up.
Yeah, City and Liverpool yet again. Listen, the only thing, as a West Ham fan, you're hanging any set of hope on is that David Moyes has been here and done this before and somehow kept this team up. That and the return of Fabianski, who continues to prove vitally important to West Ham. Otherwise, I'm not sure how they survive.
Fabianski? We've made this conversation about Lucas Fabianski.
West Ham survival is all about Lucas Fabianski.
Gav, I just want to turn it back to Liverpool. It's pretty nuts what they're doing, isn't it?
It's remarkable. It's not just the 32 wins out of 33. It's the fact that they haven't lost a game in any competition. Well, excluding the Carabao Cup, obviously. I think since the Barcelona defeat in the Premier League, they haven't lost a game since January 3rd, even 2019. That's going on 13 months without a Premier League defeat. I mean, that was the Man City game, of course. That's just absurd. And what's tremendous is also the way he's handling the spirit in the team. There are guys here who don't play very much. There's guys who rotate in and out. Doesn't seem to matter. They all play. They all seem to be happy. They're all contributing. I know it's a lot easier to do when your team's winning, but not every winning team's been able to do that either. And I think that's a testament to Jurgen Klopp's man management skills. And I can say one other testament. There's a lot of people out there who seem to think that, no, you need winners to right. People who've won stuff, they go and win more stuff because there's such a thing as being winners. Well, the reality is, before coming to Liverpool, I think with the exception of James Milner and maybe one or two others, most of these guys had never won anything significant. And I think that also goes to tell you that sometimes that mentality can come from the coach. It's not some magical quality that magical players have inside them.
Speaking of winners, Extra Time, as always, available on our YouTube channel. Be sure to...
Yeah, they did enough against a Fiorentina team who, have had a little bit of a bounce of late under Iachini. But it's a bit of a statement from Conte, given the way they kept dropping points so far. But I think we should also point out that the format of the Coppa Italia is geared entirely towards the big teams because, of course, in the quarterfinal stage, whoever finished, it's like the opposite of Spain, whoever finished higher the year before gets to play at home. And then that's a big advantage, and that's why it's not a coincidence we get these four in the semi-final.
Let's just remind you how things stand in the league at the moment. Juventus 3 points clear of Inter, according to the bookies, defending champions, as you would expect, 5-2 on Inter, meanwhile, at threes. Gav, it's the first time really we got the chance to talk to you about Christian Eriksen and how much of a game changer he is to Inter's title ambitions.
Well, look, I'm really curious to see how he uses him. We saw him in this game. He played him in that three in midfield. I don't know if that's a permanent fixture. It would seem to me that if he uses him that way, he's the alternative to Stefano Sensi. But of course, you can also use him as a second striker. I think Eriksen's there to provide quality on set pieces, to provide good deliveries when you've got a guy like Lukaku and center backs like Godin, Skriniar, and De Vrij. That's really important. And just in general to kind of be sort of a senior thinking head in midfield. If you look at that midfield, you've got kids like Barella and Sensi. You got a guy like Brozovic who's been around, but hasn't ever necessarily won things. Conte really values experience, and I think he just raises the level qualitatively and gives him another option in the middle of the park. Is he the dynamic, strong midfielder that people say Inter needed? Probably not. But I think what this does is this takes alibis from others and will force others to step up and say, so that Eriksen can say, hey, I got the quality, got part of the game. You guys provide the quantity and the running.
Meanwhile, what a 12 months it has been for Krzysztof Piątek. Of course, made that switch to Milan was exceptional. The second half of last season has not replicated that so far this campaign, and he won't. Well, certainly not with Milan, because he's off to Hertha Berlin, Gab.
Yes, Jurgen Klinsmann picking Krzysztof Piątek. I think Milan can, frankly, I think they can count themselves lucky. They're getting back, I think, 26 million euros. It is a loss, but yet in paper terms, in accounting terms, it probably nets out. It was pretty clear that he wasn't going to work in this sort of framework. And, you know, with Ibrahimovic there, with Leao there, I think the idea is...
This doesn't make very much sense. It feels like a board that is scrabbling around, desperately trying to find a solution, unable to do so. I mean, to put this in basic terms for you, I'll tell you one of the headlines I saw today. It said, Barcelona want a proven striker who's cheap. And as I thought to myself, yeah, I'd quite like a Ferrari for $5, but it's just not going to happen, you know? And this really is... Look, of course this was forced upon them in the sense that Luis Suarez got an injury they didn't anticipate. That means he's out for the rest of the season. That brings forward the search for a striker, which they knew they were going to have to deal with in the summer. But how can you be in a position where you don't have a squad with any kind of backup striker? And yet, of course, back away from that phrase I've just said, and well, yeah, they have. They've got Antoine Griezmann. And yet they're even now, without Suarez, not considering Griezmann as their number 9, not considering him as someone who can play that kind of role. And frankly, in terms of organisationally, in terms of the way that they're going about this, Barcelona are just at every turn seemingly making it even worse.
If they're struggling in that area, which they are, and they're panicking, I mean, it's probably not going to happen. It's getting very late in the day. But if they're looking at somebody who's got physicality and can link up and score goals, they could do worse than look at Raul Jimenez at Wolves, in my opinion.
Yeah, but how much is he going to cost?
Now, I know he's had his trials and tribulations before at other clubs, but, you know, you can't just judge players by that. You have to judge them by what they're doing now. And he is one of the...
But he's going to say, he's going to be 50, 60 million, isn't he? And so this is a problem as well. Barca don't have any money, do they?
Right, well, I mean, this is the thing. So, for example, when the Richarlison rumour breaks this afternoon, I must admit my response to that was a single 2-letter word repeated endlessly, that word, of course, being ha. And it was just laughable because
I thought it was no said no.
No. And you know, this is a club that, and look, football has taught us millions of times never to believe that anything is absolutely not true until until it doesn't happen, or anything that is true until it does. But this is a club that, of course, had to pull out of the negotiations with Valencia over Rodrigo, who was likely to be around 60 million, because they couldn't afford to do it now. So they're not going to suddenly turn up at Everton and say, here's 80 million, give us Richarlison. Well, they haven't got that 80 million, as you rightly say, Dan. They're now kind of scratching around, trying to find a way of generating money, selling on, for example, the 2 strikers that they do have in the squad, Carlos Perez and Abel Ruiz, two guys from the youth system, and trying to say, OK, well, we'll get maybe 10 million from there and another 10 million from there, and maybe we can get Rakitic to go. And it's, I mean, it genuinely, this sounds like an exaggeration, but I really don't think it is. You watch this and you think, this is desperate.
This is not new, though. It's not. Let's not forget, for the last couple of years, we've had guys, whenever Luis Suarez has been injured, show up in Barcelona and play for Barcelona. Guys like Kevin Prince-Boateng played in that striker position in an advanced role for Barcelona. So the lack of planning and foresight for people whose job is this very responsibility. Know that Luis Suarez needs a break every once in a while, or may get injured, or may get suspended. All of these things are possible. So maybe you have somebody already in place who could be that guy and who would want to be that guy. And yet, you're finding yourself scrambling around. And you've been doing this for years now. Again, I go back to that name. Kevin Prince-Boateng played striker for Barcelona at one point. It's not new. The issues for Barcelona are not new. And the lack of answers and the lack of solutions are not new either.
The question, though, becomes how did Barcelona find themselves here? Rather ridiculously. In the pre-season, it was Real Madrid who were in crisis mode, and everything seemed to be coming apart of the seams, and whether Zidane would be manager or not, and now all of a sudden they seem a well-oiled machine, playing fantastic football and winning games. And Real Madrid, given the issues that they have in trying to find a striker now, still have, or you would think, by all accounts, still have some kind of interest in Neymar in the summer. How does that work financially? chopping and changing managers, have their third choice in place now. All this while having the best player on the planet in your dressing room. It's become farcical.
But that's part of the reason. Because you have the best player on the planet, you think that you can do these things. Yeah. Because Messi is going to solve it for you. And you can be irresponsible in the way that you make decisions because as long as we have this guy, we have a chance. At some point, that magic is going to run out.
I mean, I get all that, and I get this chart, but they're not in the bottom half of the... And I get there's some desperate decisions being made, but there's 3 points between them and Real Madrid. So there is time for these players, good players, to come to the fore. There is time for this coach to come in and do a job and sort it out. It's, you know, they're not...
I've had enough of your optimistic ways,
I know,
Craig.
I do.
No, but hold on, but this again...
Craig says Barcelona are going to win it all.
All right, I tell you what, league's over then. 3 points, unassailable lead to Real Madrid. That's it, done. I mean...
But don't you feel like after Neymar left, they didn't really have a plan in place? Obviously, went Dembele, they went Coutinho, they went Griezmann, and it just hasn't worked.
Where did they finish last year in the league?
Of course, they won La Liga.
All right, OK.
But that's because they've got Lionel Messi.
And where's Lionel Messi now?
Still there, but
Right,
the problem
okay,
is when he's not doing his business...
Well, I get that.
How did Barcelona get on against Liverpool when Messi didn't turn up? They went to Anfield 3-0 up and they lost.
I understand there are fundamental problems with recruitment and other issues financially that Sid's brought up at Barcelona. I understand that. And they need to be addressed. However, they are in the Champions League still and they are very much in the race for La Liga still. If this Barcelona team wins La Liga this year, what's that going to say about Real Madrid?
But we're not talking about Real Madrid. We're talking about
But we
Barcelona.
will be.
We're talking about Barcelona.
But we will
We're
be.
talking about Barcelona with the best player in the world,
Who's-
yet they're not favourites to win the Champions League.
But
How
it doesn't
embarrassing is
matter.
that?
Oh, give it a rest.
Why?
They're not favourites. It's the worst thing in the world because they're not favourites. They're in the
Are
Champions
Barcelona
League.
going to win the Champions League, in your opinion?
It's possible.
Really? From what you've seen?
At the moment, but the games aren't happening for a little while. They're in the Champions League to be knocked out, if it happens, and they're in the title race still. I'll go back to my question. If they beat Real Madrid at the end of the season, what does that say about Real Madrid?
But we're not talking about Real Madrid. We're talking about Barcelona. We're talking about they are scrapping around Europe trying to find a striker to replace Luis Suarez.
And I get that. But what I'm saying is they're still in every competition, the big ones, to win it. They're not out. They're not out of the league race. They're not out of the Champions League. They have a chance. They don't have the best squad by a long shot, but they have a chance. We're sitting here going, disaster. Disaster. Is it a disaster yet? If they win the league at the end of the year, is that a disaster?
Gab?
No, it's not a disaster. I do agree with Craig that let's leave the Champions League out of it. When you have a shutdown keeper at the back or you have Messi up front, you can win the Champions League in pretty much all circumstances. That said, I think there's 2 points to make here. One is financially, they're floating this idea of the fact that they can't do it because, of course, there's a salary cap in Spain and your budget is set at the start of the season. That's a bit of a myth because they could easily, if they find the right player, they could easily loan him with an obligation to buy in the summer. So that really shouldn't be a hurdle. I think the other thing, which we haven't discussed, which is I think more serious, is you just change managers. You brought in Quique Setién, who is much less of a pragmatist than Valverde. So you can't just get any old striker. For his play to work, he needs possession and he needs pressing and energy from frontmen. You already have Messi up front, so you're not going to get the pressing there. If you bring in a veteran striker who's going to sort of, stand around and feed off scraps and can't get around the pitch, you can forget the pressing part of the game, and that's really going to affect you on the pitch, which is why out of the grab bag of strikers that they've been linked with, if they have any nous about them, there's a whole bunch of them that you rule out straight off the bat, and you go for a younger energy guy if you're going to go down that route.
Why you lot never learn your lesson?
What lot?
You lot.
What do you mean, us lot?
Wait, why are you bringing me into this?
Well, because you were part of it.
Part of what?
2 years ago.
Part of what?
Around a couple of years.
What did I do?
Well, I'm going to tell you in a minute. A couple of years ago, around roughly in that time frame, you all sat and you had a
Hey, how's Leicester doing?
You had a conversation.
How's Leicester doing?
You had a conversation about an end of an era. Barcelona, end of an era, right?
Yeah.
And now we're having the same conversation when they're still in the title race.
How many Champions League have they won since we had that end of an era discussion?
They're winning the league.
None.
What would Real Madrid rather win this year? I've already asked you that question last week, and you said the league.
What would Barcelona?
So it's good enough for Real Madrid, not good enough for Barcelona.
What would Barcelona prefer to win?
I have no idea.
Of course, it's the Champions League.
I have no idea what I don't know. You said I don't know.
Sid, what do you make of this?
In a way, but in any case, are we not? We're talking. These are kind of two different debates in a way. In that, as Craig, you rightly said, it's 2 years in a row that they won the league. In part, that suggests that they're not so bad. This ties in with Ali's point that when you've got Messi and when you're winning the league, you can feel like things are okay, and then maybe you don't do some of that housekeeping as well as you should. You don't do some of that planning as well as you should because you rest on your laurels. You rest on the fact that, well, this will be okay. And as I say, these are sort of two different debates. We're not talking about this being a disaster in terms of their league position or a disaster in terms of where their season may end up. Talking about the disaster or the mess they're making of an open pursuit for a striker. Those are not necessarily the same thing. You can be absolutely disastrous and still go and win everything. I mean, it's not necessarily the same argument.
Well, we get that, Sid, but you can't be a disaster and go and win everything. How can you be a disaster?
No, but you can be a disaster in terms of your planning, can't you? You can be a disaster in terms of what you're trying to do now to replace Luis Suarez. Yeah. And that doesn't necessarily mean you're a disaster in terms of the 11 players you're going to put on the pitch tomorrow night and the 11 that you're going to put on the pitch at the weekend and the 11 you'll put on the pitch against Napoli in the Champions League when you might beat them. Those are different things. The other thing, of course, is the context of this. And you rightly say, they've won 2 league titles in 2 years. And in a way, that should be enough. It certainly, I think, should be enough for some people to say that these have been 2 successful years. But of course, whether fairly or unfairly, these 2 seasons have been defined by those 2 Champions League exits. Against Rome, maybe can be written off as an accident. Against Liverpool, you can say, well, maybe it's accidental in that had they put away any of the 3 or 4 semi-decent chances they had in the first half, that's it. They probably go on and win the treble. And of course, the treble, you don't get any better than that. But that doesn't disguise the fact that there were flaws there. In fact, some of those flaws came to the surface in that game when they hadn't done previously. But it doesn't mean that they weren't there just because they were winning. Because you could argue that they were winning in spite of their planning, not because of their planning. Quick
one before we do it. Who's favourite to win the Champions League this year still? Man City?
City and Liverpool. Why are you hitting the deck?
Man City.
Why are you hitting the deck?
You're saying to me Barcelona can't win the Champions League because they're in disarray. City?
What's that got to do with Barcelona?
Because I'm pointing out that they've been the favourites to win the Champions League, yet they've got a back line that's all over the place.
Right. Yes.
So tell me how much of a difference that is with Barcelona. And you're saying to me earlier, they can't win the Champions League. Are we saying the favourites can't win the Champions League now as well, City?
But that's who the bookies have as favourites.
That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying to you. That's all I'm saying to you. Writing Barcelona off again, like you did a couple of years ago.
Oh, yeah.
You lot.
Really well since then. Well done. Well done. Yeah. Losing to Roma. Mighty Roma.
What do you mean?
Well, that's it. That's how their season's been defined over the last 2 years.
What?
Losing to Roma, losing to Liverpool.
I get that, but they won the league twice and Real Madrid would take that.
Of course they would.
Right.
Well, that's not. Barcelona would have taken winning 3 Champions Leagues in a row.
Of course they would have, but it's not been that bad. I get said they've got problems, but you're sitting the way you're having the discussion is if it's over. They've got nothing to play for this year.
Well, they've got the Copa del Rey.
But there's also a question. Sorry, I was going to say. There is also a question of direction and of progression. Okay, and so by that I mean if you look at Barcelona's squad and you look at the players that are helping them through the last 2 league titles, for example, who are leading them through that, I think it's almost impossible to find a genuinely unequivocal, successful signing since 2014. So since then, there isn't a single player, and maybe Frenkie de Jong will be this player, and maybe Antoine Griezmann will be this player, although it's very early to judge those 2. But there isn't a player since the summer in which Ter Stegen, Luis Suarez turned up, in which you would say, they bought this guy, and he was without doubt a success. And so you don't just see what they've won, you see where it's going. And so you see a season in which they win the league, and then another season in which win the league, and then this season when you say, well, what's been added to that squad? What's getting better? And while nothing is being added, that yet at least, that you say this is an unqualified success, you say, well, Piqué is older, Messi is older, Suarez is older and is now injured, Busquets is older and slower, there's no two ways about that. They haven't resolved the issue at right back. Jordi Alba is not as dominant as he once was. So it's not just about what they have won over the last 2 years, it's about where that group of players and where that team is going and what they have done to prevent it reaching that kind of breaking point and then having a really significant problem, because these problems were there through success. And of course, they get worse as time goes by. And that hasn't really been foreseen or dealt with. And so, as I say, in that sense, yes, this is problematic. But it's problematic with the planning, not necessarily what's on the pitch yet. And they can still win the Champions League. Yeah, of course they can. Greece won the European Championship.
I can't handle your negativity, sir.
Let's go.
10 minutes I've been trying to do this Copa del Rey promo. Here it is.
Barcelona might win it. I hope they win it. Come on.
I bet you a 10 and they don't.
Look at this. Barcelona.
Mourinho signing, or is this a Tottenham signing? Do you know?
But Craig, Mourinho is the Tottenham manager.
Right. So it might not have been a player that he necessarily was desperate for, but, you know, he's a decent enough player.
Yep.
But if he doesn't get what he needs, exactly what he needs...
I mean,
go on.
I think the argument is obviously Son can play up front, has played up front, was effective when Kane was injured last year. And so, you know, the argument might be that, well, look, we'll just play Son through the middle, and we've got, you know, and Bergwijn can fill in for Son. Obviously, Lucas Moura can also play through the middle. I think they saw the opportunity. It's not a ton of money. I think it's right around 30 million, we said, right? So in this market, given his age, you know, he'd have to be sort of a real Vincent Janssen for them to lose money on him. So I think that's how they view it. And I think in some ways you are not quite in rebuild mode, but you are throwing forward, right? You look at Jedson Fernandez, even younger, just turned 21 a couple weeks ago. So I think that might be the way they're approaching this.
Pablo Mari is an Arsenal player making the move from Brazil. He joins on loan from Flamengo. Gab, is this a good deal?
Well, he's not costing a lot of money. He's a player who Mikel Arteta knows because, of course, he was a Manchester City player. I don't think he ever actually played for City, except possibly some preseason friendly. He was shipped off on loan 3 different times, if I'm not mistaken. He was at Girona, which, of course, is 49% owned by City. He was at Deportivo La Coruña. Eventually, City didn't renew his deal, and he was sold to Flamengo, where he had an absolute monster season for Flamengo and winning the league at a canter, winning the Libertadores, and of course, you know, probably playing Liverpool almost as close as anybody has in the last couple of months in the Club World Cup. So I think he's an extra body in there. Is he instantly going to be, you know, a first choice? I wouldn't have thought so. I would have still thought that, you know, that Arteta's taking a longer view, and it may take him some time to settle into this because Jorge Jesus' brand of football very...
This is a live extra time today, isn't it?
It is live, yes.
Okay, well, button up.
Fortunately, Stevie's not here. I don't even have the questions.
Oh, well, that's
no one's in the
very
studio
live.
to give them to me. That's the way they're like. Yes, they did print it out, Mr. Producer, but I can't get up and get them because I have to present it. No, that's fine. That's
Ali, you go get them.
I got it.
I got the questions. Go on, Ali.
There we go.
Go on, Ali.
There they come. Right, Ali.
Yeah, look at that. Change of pace. Change of pace. Yes.
Oh, good. Right.
Live TV,
What
these
we
things
got?
happen.
Yep. So, shot sheets that I needed during the show that I didn't get. Right, okay, good.
Hey, easy, relax.
Hey, do what Adrian does before the show. He holds it up. I've had lots of questions.
Are there actually moral victories like United winning today for players, or is that just something pundits talk about?
What pundits?
I don't know what pundits.
I think the United result will quite clearly be spun into a moral victory.
If you're a player, are you going home happy if you're a United player?
Yes.
If you're a player, you're not falling for that nonsense.
Right.
The manager is going to hang his hat on it. But as a player, you know we're out.
You know who usually talks about moral victories? Teams that are not very good.
Right.
Those are the teams that need moral victories, need hope and a light at the end of the tunnel and something that you can hang on to and say, you know what, guys, next time we'll get them. And next time comes around and you don't get them, and then you try again.
So you wouldn't be happy if you're a United player, despite the fact you just won?
You're out of the competition.
No, because Ali's just said teams that need it. Manchester United, no one needs a moral victory more than Man United at the moment. And Solskjaer, it seems to me, and I say this admittedly from a distance from Spain, but seems to be constantly talking about how positive things are and clinging on to things that I think the rest of us probably can't even see.
See, that's him negative again. You can't help. I tell you what. Don't have a look down. Don't even come to me unless it's about Barcelona. All right. Don't even come to me. I can't.
Let's see. We've got
I'm the only positive person in here today.
What's going on with you?
Very positive today. Who was it? Deserves a second chance. Everybody deserves a second chance.
I know.
Who said that?
You!
When?
Who are you talking about from Wolves? Who are you talking about?
Raul
Jimenez. Oh, he has a bad spell, but he deserves a second chance. Everybody deserves a second chance.
Yeah, what's wrong with you? Honestly, what's wrong with you?
I tell you what,
Craig, are you on a bet tonight?
Sorry, Sid.
Are you on a bet or something? Has someone put you up to this?
Hold on. Put me up to what? Playing the Mr. Nice
To be
guy.
positive. They said, Craig, listen, I'll give you a tenner to be positive for the entire show.
What it was, Sid, as I came out my house today, I went, I'm going to be Mr. Nice Guy today.
Hey,
That's what I did.
it's working.
I'll tell you what, I looked all yesterday, trying to watch the Coppa Italia yesterday on ESPN Plus.
Yeah.
2 desktops, him and I,
Right.
exactly the same desktops, ESPN Plus, his was 3 seconds ahead.
Right.
And it was doing my head in. And that got me almost as angry as the Barcelona today.
You have no idea how angry
But
got.
have you not got used to being behind people, Craig?
This is live TV,
Kind of
Sid, this
open
is
goal.
live.
That was the kind of open goal that even Ali couldn't miss. I'm sorry. There's just no way.
My kind of range
Now,
is
let
what
me see
they
if I
call
can think of one for Shaq as well. Hang on. No, sorry.
It's gone into the memory bank, that Sid, I can tell you. What do you
Mr.
think,
Positive's just on the brink now.
Listen, what do you think my name is? Stuart Holt?
Okay, Gab's here as
Remember
well.
Stuart used to come on the show before he moved to another network. And we almost had to write the question.
Stuart
No idea.
Well, because,
No idea.
because Sid suggested I
It's gone sideways.
wasn't very sharp.
Oh, I see.
Sharp-minded. And that took me to Stewie, who needed 24-hour notice on the questions so he could answer them in time. No, he didn't.
Right. Anyone else you want to talk about?
I'll talk about anybody. Not a problem. I'm not talking. That's not a negative. That's a very positive thing to say.
No.
I think you're fine.
Quite negative. Gab Marcotti's here as well.
He's hiding.
He
Gab's
is.
hiding.
Okay. Why are Juve having a hard time selling players, Gab?
Because they're having a hard time selling players like Emre Can. Because what do I always say? There's no such thing as a free transfer. And they signed all these guys like Emre Can, like Sami Khedira, like Aaron Ramsey, and they had to go and pay a huge whack in commissions and also give them a big fat salary. And so a guy like Emre Can is on, off the top of my head, it's something close to about 180,000 to 200,000 pounds a week, and there aren't very many, and has a long contract. And there aren't very many teams that can afford that. And so they're stuck with a bunch of players they can't sell. And that's why they had Emre Can and Mario Mandzukic, who they couldn't even, there wasn't even room for them in the 25-man Champions League squad because they had so many senior pros under contract.
Gab, why did you leave Sid off the extra time tweet? Was this another Mark Ogden senior journalist problem?
No, well, as you know, Sid, as you know, Dan,
He's rattled.
sending the extra time tweet is below my pay grade. It's not something I normally do. I don't get the daily practice that you do. And it was the producer asked me to do it quickly. He's like, oh, look, Dan forgot. It's his fault. Blame him.
Yeah.
Get this out there quickly.
Did he just blame you?
And
Yeah. And you left
because
Sid
I
out
say,
because you're
look,
jealous.
I'm just relaying the information.
That's it.
So I thought I'd be doing you a favor, Dan.
Do you know what would annoy me?
What happened? What happened? What happened?
Where's the
Wait a minute.
Where do we start? Where do we start?
Do you know what would annoy me? Because you tweet out, you generally, 99.9% of the time, tweet out the questions.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Even when you're off work and
Yes.
there's another presenter on,
Yes.
you still do it.
Yes.
That'd make my blood boil.
Why would that make you
Well,
angry?
because if the producer's ringing me on my day off to get me to tweet something out,
Yeah.
that
It's only 5 seconds out of my day.
it's 5 seconds in your day off. It's not 5 seconds because he's already called you or text you, so that's seconds. And then you've got to tweet it. Why don't you just say no?
Well,
Because it doesn't bother me.
Hence the reason why the producer does not call you to tweet it out.
He doesn't call me for
Even
that.
on your day on.
He doesn't call me to give player man markings. He doesn't call me to do what do you call that when the two teams combined 11s?
Combined 11s,
He
yes.
doesn't. But he does text me at nearly 5:30 in the morning to tell me when we're on air. And my
you are.
phone's buzzing away.
so we're not positive anymore.
Yeah. Stay positive.
That lasted long.
Chelsea won 7 games in a row with Jorginho Kovacic pivot. Why doesn't Lampard revert back to that system?
You asking me?
Anyone, really,
Yeah,
to be
go on,
honest.
Gab.
Not
Yeah,
said
yeah,
he
man.
doesn't know what's
Well,
going on.
because if you have Jorginho and Kovacic, then in a pivot, you don't have N'Golo Kante in there. So, and if you want to go and play the three of them in midfield, then there's no Mason Mount, unless you want to play Mount on the wing. And if you play Mount on the wing, then it's either Hudson-Odoi or Willian who doesn't get on the pitch. I think it's as simple as that. He wants to play more attacking football, and he's got to make decisions, and he's got to take choices. Personally, I think what we've seen against bigger teams is he's dropped Mount and he's played the three of them together. And weirdly, even though you would think having an extra sort of two-way midfielder might give you more cover, that's not always the case, because then you get a situation where your fullbacks push on and it doesn't quite work as well when your fullbacks are Chelsea's fullbacks, with all due respect to Chelsea's fullbacks. Except for Reece James. He's very good going forward.
Sid, can you just repeat what Gab said, just to prove you were listening?
Yeah, he said that if you play those two, you're not playing Conte. If you want to put Conte in there, then you lose Mount, unless you put Mount on the wing. And if you do put Mount on the wing, then you lose one of the others from the wing, and then you get exposed because the two fullbacks push up the pitch.
You weren't listening.
And that's not good. With all due respect to the
he's
fullbacks,
good.
they're not really good enough, except Reece James, who absolutely is.
If we'd only listened a bit more when he was on that programme in the UK,
University Challenge.
yes. Might answer the few
I
more
listened
questions.
then, but
You just didn't know the answer. Celebrity University
Exactly.
Challenge, and they call up Sid.
Here we go. Celebrity news. We're a man down today. Get some. Go and look on the street out there, see if there's anybody walking by. Well, there's a guy walking by, but he's the only trouble is he's mumping on about Barcelona.
Yeah, well, it's-
Get him on.
Mumping on about, what is he in a Real Oviedo kit?
It sounds like the Barcelona scouting team.
Right. Why did the
that's
entire...
basically what it was. I think it was Josep Maria Bartomeu trying to pick the team for us. Now, we'll get this guy. He doesn't know any answers, but who cares? Put him on the team. He's just like Boateng.
Why did the entire panel doubt Zlatan's effectiveness on a club given his age, despite what he did at United and the Galaxy?
Who doubted it?
Stevie definitely doubted it.
Well, I'll leave us.
You doubted it?
No, I didn't.
Yes, you did.
I doubted him going to Milan.
Yes, that's a
But
doubt.
I didn't doubt his performance.
Oh, you always thought he was going to do good.
Well, I just felt he could go to a team that's doing a little bit better. But ultimately, he's had a good effect on Milan. I didn't doubt him personally.
Did you doubt him, Shaq?
No.
What I doubted was that
Shaq could have said anything.
what I doubted was whether Milan was going to have enough of providing service for Zlatan, so that Zlatan could do the things that we know he can do inside the 18-yard
Sounds like
box.
you did doubt him a bit.
Yeah.
What?
You doubted his
No,
effectiveness.
I tell you what I doubted. Having to deal with Matteo Bonetti during those days.
Oh,
So whatever he was saying, I was going the opposite direction.
Well, I would imagine he was just saying awesome.
Yes.
Or what is it? World class.
Final point. Is any member of the crew thinking of growing a mustache?
Oh, well, that's a solid no.
Shaka, you can't grow facial hair very well. We've already established
can.
that. You had a weird, horrible beard that didn't link up.
It wasn't weird or horrible.
It wasn't a beer. Well, that's...
Gab, I think out of everyone, a mustache maybe would be your forte.
Yeah, so that Ali can say I look like Oliver Hardy. No, thank you.
Oh, well.
Okay, first of all, no idea who he's talking about.
It's Lauren Hardy.
Still no
Do
idea.
you know who Lauren Hardy?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, black and white.
He doesn't watch black and white TV.
There you go. Correct.
Sid, moustache, yes or no?
He said the one.
No, definitely not.
No.
Go on, Sid.
Definitely not. No.
Go on.
No, well, he could work.
And if,
I
and if
think
you
he
did,
could work
you'd have to grow a really silly one, just because if you're gonna look silly, you might as well look really, really silly. Actually, it is true that when I broke my leg and I was in hospital, and it took me about 10 days to have my first shave, having broken my leg, because obviously been in an operating theatre and stuff. And as anyone does when their beard has grown very, very much bigger than they ever intended, they shave it off in stages. And I did leave a massive drop handlebar moustache for about 2 minutes, and I looked ridiculous.
So you couldn't have let me get my head right. You couldn't have a shave
because his leg was
in
broken.
hospital with a broken leg.
Yeah.
Well, because as you know,
do you not shave with your toes? I use my toes to shave. Do you not do that?
Leg, you can't
Honestly,
shave.
Craig, there's something really wrong with you. I don't know what you think you're playing at.
That's why I do yoga a lot. So that I'm flexible. But I do, so.
When's the last time you did yoga?
Well, actually, I've never done yoga. But I have done something that's the same as yoga. It's Pilates.
Why are you saying it as if no one's ever heard of Pilates before?
I'm telling you what,
It's new thing. You may have heard of it. It's called Pilates.
it's yoga on steroids.
Yeah, we know what it is.
What is it then?
It's
Yoga
yoga on
on steroids.
It's
steroids.
Craig just
You're going
admitted
red
to
again.
taking steroids.
You're getting that look like you gave me during the Barcelona game. Like you're going to have like a thrombosis or something. Your veins are going to stick out. What's Pilates?
It's all about stretching. You've gone that all the equipment, don't you? Stretch all your muscles
and
out.
core strength.
There you go.
Core strength.
Well, the Pilates I was at had no equipment, and also because you don't know what Pilates is, you're just Pilates. The difference with Pilates and yoga, there was all these core sit-ups and stuff as well, and it was hard.
I just told you it was core training.
All right.
You see, you don't listen to
No,
me.
he said Dan doesn't know. Dan
I don't
doesn't know.
And yoga's more relaxing. I hear.
You said you did it.
I need to go home. I just had a message off my daughter.
Oh, no.
Yeah, the dog's had a accident.
I mean, it's all-encompassing. We are covering everything.
He's had a little...
We know what you meant. We don't think he'd been hit by a car.
Yeah, she sent me a message. What am I supposed to do? I'm here. I'm here trying to be positive in Barcelona. I can't be home cleaning stuff up.
Oh, dear. He's got to go to his Pilates class now, or yoga, whatever it is.
And then go.
You haven't done Pilates
go
once
see the
since
dog.
I've known you.
Oh, no, I did it in England.
Right.
Oh,
How long you
sorry,
been at
life only exists when you come here.
You said when you did it.